How deadly. That was amazing. I didn't introduce myself before. I'm Jenna Rain Warwick. I'm a Luritja woman, born and raised in Queensland, but yeah, that comes from my mum's side. So my mum's a Luritja woman, my nanny's a Luritja woman, all the way up for forever, and that's just south of Alice Springs. Been privileged to get to know Gabi and her practice for a couple years now, and really, stoked to be asked to come and host this panel and this discussion. I thought I could run through who everybody is, but it's always best to hear from the people themselves. Just maybe first, we'll start with Yaraan and then go down the line. Just who you are, who's your mob, and how you got to know Gabi,
First, I just want to say, wow, that work is stunning. It's really hits you right in your tumtumpa, in your heartbeat. My name's Yaraan Couzens Bundle. I'm a proud Gunitjamara, Japorong, Yuan and Gedyura woman. And I've known Gabi for years, and I'm really proud to be connected to these amazing sister girls that are bringing, cultural back in through an art lens, but through the way that we want to bring it back and how we want to share. Thank you.
My name's Hayden Ryan. I'm a Yuan man from southeast coast of New South Wales. My family are the Ellas and Stewarts and so on and so forth. Too many of them. I know Gabi because I've worked on the sound design with her for the project.
And for my family, he grew up in Nambucca for a bit too. Just a little context. Maxville, sorry. Born in Maxville. Mum and that. I'm Gabi, the artist. Very proud Anaiwan and Gumbengi woman. I grew up in Armidale, New South Wales, where my family's from. I'm very lucky and privileged to have my Irabellas here, a couple of them. I won't shame them up, but if you see some auntie girls who look like me, then that's them. And also two of my sister girls as well, who've come in from interstate. But I think, we can yarn through the work and I guess learn about me through the process.
Definitely. Give those mob that microphone, I reckon. Deadly. Can you just talk a little bit about how this work is in relation to the previous work at West Space? How it came about a little bit. And it's not necessarily a sequel, but it's kind of an ongoing practice, a research-based practice.
So I'm currently doing my PhD, and the intentions behind my PhD was to further develop my nan's work. My nan Pat, who's my dad's mum, and she wrote a book called Inglebar and the Five Black Matriarchs. Nan was stolen and then she was returned when she was around 10, 11, I believe. Recording and documenting kinship and place was really important. Inglebar is a very special place to us. That was the initial reasons of doing the research. And then in the book, there was mention of mob walking between Inglebar, Woolbrook to Armidale, which is around 100 kilometres. And then there's also been, just over the last decade in particular, where I've been working in the archive. There's been recent research by Anaiwan researchers into the skin systems, and through that we understood the structures, and that was recorded through the archive. And then I noticed that was something that we embodied and lived, being raised by my mother and her sisters, by really strong women in the family, and my mum's sisters and their children have always been my siblings, and I've had many mothers. Yaraan and Irabella, that was at West Space, was a celebration of both place and how we're connected to that place through these skin systems. And I had one of my really good sister girls, Lorna Munro, write about that show. And when I was talking about the work to her, she was like, well, you know, when a pattern's well established, it can't help but repeat itself. And it's believed that skin is a gift from Creator, so that very ancient ways of being, and it's something that we still practice. Yeah. And yeah, I'll get you to keep on asking questions.
So yeah, you've just contextualised the previous work iteration, kind of led it to TENYA today. I might bring it just to, because visually it's a really powerful work, and I love that you're the subject of it. That's so powerful. But to me, like the sound and even hearing it within this room makes it like that's the centre of the work, and it's so powerful. And for me, thinking about, as Aboriginal people, we are one of the most, in Australia and worldwide, we're one of the most documented, archived, researched people, and we have to continually kind of engage, whether or not we want to or not, with that legacy, to kind of find our histories and reconnect to those kinship ways. But just bringing it back to sound, I know, Hayden, you know, you've worked on the sound for this, but Yaraan, and we just had a little bit of a chat out there. You said, oh, it's so good that you know, Gabi's working and touching base with the kind of the sounds of country. And I think, what do you reckon about that? And also not having country on the screen as well. Like, we almost just have to listen to it a little bit more. But yeah, I just wanted to start. What do you reckon of that?
Yeah, very powerful, my sister. It's heightening, it's honouring the other senses that we sometimes dull out in this society, and how we really use them to navigate our country, not only physically but spiritually. It speaks to that powerful connection to the song and the song lines that are all over our country, land, sky and sea. And I've just actually bought this little... Take your banana back. I just bought this to in honour of that sisterhood, of having that connection through our cultural revival work. This is from an image from an ancient soundscape, which is the ocean. And so that really speaks to, you know, the amount, the depth of culture that we have lost, but that's actually there in the country all this time. And that it speaks to, like your work speaks directly to intergenerational gifts of love and power, and not just the trauma. It's really special.
What do you reckon of that? I mean, you're obviously like really about your work, you know, working in this space, and yeah, kind of coming up from a, you know, technical kind of point of view, but obviously you would come from all those emotional, you know, points that we're kind of bringing in too. But yeah, any reflections?
Yeah, I think one thing that we briefly touched on in conversation when we were making the work was memory. And do you want to say something? No shame. And how through like participating in sound design, in relation to like vocalizing country, it stimulates our memory. And this is something that like I do a lot in my own work, particularly with sound manipulation and trying to recreate the sounds of country from memory. But then it's a completely different thing working with field recordings. But even like when we started going through the sound files, like the sound of like your aunties and family laughing, and I'm just being like, oh my God, that's my family. Like I know those laughs and I know where they come from. That like embedded, innate knowing of country and family is a really powerful element to work with sonically. So when it came to like manipulating the sounds and working with them in this way, I find that process kind of reaffirms our relationship to country. And because it's such a large part of the work that I do, like I've been creating a little bit of a sound archive with different sounds of this, but the same sounds of different countries. So like magpies and the ocean and cicadas and wind. And you don't realize until you listen to all of those sounds comparatively that they're not only different, but you're taken to those places. The only one I can think of at the moment is like listening to the cicadas here, and then listening to, I had someone give me the sounds of cicadas from the Central Coast, and it sounds hot. You know, like I know what that feels like because I've been there and I've listened to that. So yeah, I think like in terms of working with sound and memory and field recording, and from an Aboriginal perspective, like is such a powerful tool. And I think like within the context of this project and your PhD, like it really reaffirms that connection.
And why did what brought you to do this commission in particular, and is it so much of a departure from previous practice, just thinking about sound and
Well, I did used to work with a little bit of sound, put a little bit of reverb on things, but I just thought this was a really cool opportunity. And so with Nan's book, Inglebar and the 5 Black Matriarchs, it was a co-authorship, which was quite problematic, and Nan actually hated it by the end of it because of how she relied on the co-author, who was a white woman, to kind of just had this innate trust in her that she would just do what Nan said. But like the way she articulated Nan, like just like dropped off the first letter didn't speak proper English and all that, and Nan didn't like that representation. But then finding out there's all these audio recordings from the interviews and so on, there's country within those interviews as well. So it's just still like the archive is just so flat, and it doesn't actually really have the full dimensions of country present, and nor is that in the actual book. So like when they do a site visit in Inglebar, you hear that crunchy stepping. Or the birds and just all people in the background, or you get to hear what these old fellas sound like. And so I just thought it was really important to like see how sound can really tell story in a rich way. Like even when we were doing the recordings, even just like a lot of the recordings are with my family. You hear like the reversing of the car, just like little laughs, my niece playing with a like toy and all that kind of stuff. Just gives a richer archive of who we are. And the thing is, we exist in relation to each other. So just having one singular voice doesn't make sense, nor does it just, our indigeneity is just tied into so many different things, and I think sound really helps with that.
No, and I also think when we're all talking about, Hayden, when you're saying like, oh, you know what that cicada, what that weather's like and what that country is, it's kind of, you don't know unless you've been to that country or have connection to that place, if that's where it's recording. And it's obviously, centering people that have those connections kind of thing. That's what I love about the archive, especially sound archive. And as you're saying, like when it comes to writing and texts, often trying to remove, flatten, and kind of make it understood by everyone, and that's not really how country works, kind of thing. So I think it's really important, and it's so nice to hear everything around, and not just that kind of
maybe what's wanted or what's expected of Indigenous representation. You know, even having you sitting there in the house, in your home, you know, you're not out in the bush. You're sitting there in the lounge room and you can see that book right behind you. I saw that in the corner, and you're in your dressing gown, and that kind of, you know, we live in a modern world now and we're not just out in the, you know, these all exist together, and it doesn't dismiss or reduce any kind of cultural integrity or sovereignty, but yeah, what do you reckon about that too?
Yeah, okay. No, that's all good. That was funny. Well, I think so I have to say as well, like, because I'm doing this walk, this kind of sound work was supposed to be about making a protection song for us while we're going on the walk. Because, you know, returning back to country, you want to be able to return proper. And when this was all happening, my family experienced a really big loss in our lives. And so my capacity to even want to go on this walk, I was supposed to go on this walk in March, but everything just kind of changed for me. And I think what ended up eventually happening is that I had to create this work according to what my capacity was, which was really limited. And I think there was just more responsibility to look after each other in the family. And so that kind of is how this work was created. So, like, you know, I was planning to, like, have these mad yarns with my family about, like, resurgence and all that kind of stuff, and, like, get their thoughts on it. But then it's like, actually, we just need to be, and whatever I capture is just a recording of us. And another thing I did was, like, I morphed the yarns with the water, with the river, as a way to protect those yarns, and that, you know, we are the river. And so a kind of protection came around in a different type of way. And it also just kind of dawned on me, it's just like, well, this work's about what is indigeneity, and this is a big part of being a black fella, is that we go through grief in so many ways. And when we're going through grief, we go through it collectively. And I don't want to perform indigeneity to create a work. And what I'm going through right now is probably the blackest thing ever. So it was just about honouring that. I am off country, but inside of me is, like, so many different generations. Like, it's just like black woman after black woman after black woman. And, you know, I wanted to scream a lot earlier this year, just for my own purposes, but it's just like that scream is just a collective scream as well that goes back a long time. And I think just understanding that we embody our blackness, we don't need to perform anything for anyone. And that's why I was like, I just like wearing pyjamas. And I just realised too, my nan had, like, very similar pyjamas as well, and we always got a mattress out in the lounge room. It's one of my favourite places to weave, watching a show. And yeah, I think I'm answering what you asked. Yeah.
Not performing indigeneity. Yeah. And it's just that it often, I don't know if there's a question, but yeah, I feel the same when life happens and you're just existing as, you know, a black fella, and you feel like you've got these deadlines or you've got something to do, but almost it's the hardest. It's important for us to push back and just be able to take care of our own selves, to be able to take care of our family, because at the end of the day, like, that's what's more important than creating anything. And then when I often feel like when you're forcing yourself to make something, like, even, you know, you weren't meant to go on that walk just yet, I think, and we've been talking about those time as well, like, even when you're ready to be ready to accept knowledge from older people, even when they're ready to even tell you, it doesn't come when you want it sometimes. Sometimes it comes when you least expect it, but it just kind of does when it happens, and that is almost in, conflict with the very consumerist capitalistic world that we live in. What do you guys, I have no questions, but just kind of prompt, what do you reckon about that? Just thinking about pushing back on, timelines as well, and just making sure that you're okay before anything else. And like, obviously, I'm sure we all have to do that. We're working in, you have to make money.
Doing it now.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Hayden?
I need a bit more time to process that
Yeah,
one.
no.
Did you say anything? You all right?
Yeah, just that. That's exactly what both of you just said. Yeah, we, especially as a dancer as well, like we get asked to perform our culture a lot, and it sort of comes back to our time and how we manage things with our family. And you gonna say hello? And yeah, the little boss woman, and that's just how we have to do things around family and country. Holding that that cultural integrity into the future and building on what that means to, live and embody your cultural revival every day.
Yeah. I think as well, the thing that sort of sparked in my mind was that, like, particularly with like artistic work, like there is so much more than just the creative process. And I think that particularly with like a lot of my research and my research in relation to the work that I produce, people don't really realize there's a lot of literal reading and research, and you would have experienced this as well. There's a lot of violent history that you have to go through, and confronting history, and lately in my world, like very graphic history that doesn't leave, and it sits with you when you compose this work. And it's something that I've sort of like had to navigate in the past few years, is like reading about, like lately I've been reading about the local history here and massacres and native police and like all of these different aspects of what built this colony. And that, yes, it gets expressed through the work that we do, but it also sits with you. And that, I don't think a lot of people realise that kind of research and knowledge has a huge toll on your emotional health and mental health. And I feel like even like when we were having our first yarn, in our first recording session, I probably spent like an hour or two just talking before we actually got to recording, and just like putting everything on the table, and unpacking everything and like clearing that air before we can actually get to the artistic practice is like important. That's what I thought about that brief moment.
Yeah, no, definitely. You have to be a good researcher, even if you don't really want to be sometimes, to find out things. Whether, I said that in our uni class the other day, like blackfellows are really good researchers because so much of our family stuff is in all these books, and it's like when you want to know what your family was doing at one time, go look at the policies that were enacted on that country. Just going back to visually, the work, what strikes me and is almost in direct conflict with the kind of extraction model of maybe in relation to that book that you were saying, or extracting Indigenous knowledges, there's a lot of things that aren't shown. It's off screen, there's muffled voices. Can you just talk to the purposes of that and the kind of, just what you didn't show and what's not?
Yeah, so, like I was saying, it was such a really vulnerable time for my family, and it was also like, I could have been like, oh, actually, I don't think I'm ready to do this work, but then it was just like, actually, this can be a site that can hold my grief, and it's a place in which I can also honour my sister and my family and our strength and all the things that make us us. So the audible yarns were yarns that came from like my pop. He's got a little spiel, and it's really deadly, and he's just like an orator, and that's one part of his spiel that he does, and I wanted to honour that, and I wanted to honour him, and it was just freaky, like all the yarns that we were having that I was recording, but just ended up being about kinship and just all the old fellas. So like the other lady who was talking about the waterfall incident is one of my other Irabellas, the elder sister of my mother's. And it was a story about their great-grandmother going to a station to help deliver a baby. And whilst they were out there, the great-grandmother and all the kids, they were told that the welfare was coming. So they all went and hid under a waterfall, including dogs. And so it's just like, I want these yarns to be heard. Like, we're still requiring to tell truth and be adamant about our truth telling. And then also just at the end was my niece Sarah, who's actually being a part of language workshops and delivering them, and I just thought it was real neat to include her. And then all those yarns underneath were those yarns that I was having with my family, which is kinship, and that's just our business. But I also wanted it to be audible enough so like a black fella audience could be like, oh, I hear that, like how this fella's like, oh, I hear those laughs and I recognise them. And I really wanted black fellas to be able to sit with the work in that way. It's very much like Amy Maguire, black witness, white witness. So it's also about access and about what do we need to give over. Like, actually, we don't have to hand over shit, to be honest. And I think we don't have to like we can hold back. And for me, about, you know, who I am and I just feel like there's so much joy in my life and in my family's life, but there's a whole lot of rage as well, and these things coexist at the same time, and it's really important to honour that while also protecting ourselves. Yeah, and also I wanted to say, I don't know if I did say this earlier, but no, I did say about the protection song. All good.
Yes, but maybe it hasn't happened. It's kind of at the initial stages, and it's funny how, you know, as I was saying, some things doesn't happen when you want to, but then it ends up revealing itself, even when you're not, intending it, or you think you're not, but it does kind of happen. I really love what you're talking about, kind of centering an Indigenous audience, because there are bits in there that black fellas are like, oh, that sounds like my family, or that's that. And there is some power to kind of, centering mob and holding back, because so much, as I said, about Australia is looking at us, looking directly, witnessing us, being observed. And even, you know, that's what came across visually again, is you don't often look at the screen or the camera directly. Most of the time you're looking at the weaving, I think 1 or 2 times in that, which is kind of, again, picking up on those colonial archival photographic practices that not only was so present, but so many companies and Australia, Kodak, made so much money off of our own image. Is that something? Yeah, obviously you are referencing that, but can you talk a little bit about that?
That's been something I've always been obsessed with, is just thinking about like the camera in itself, and photographers, early day photographers. Like, there were people coming over here en masse in the early days because they just figured out how to make a camera that they could travel with. And we were the exotic. We were the people who were going to die out. We were an oddity that they wanted to capture and make bank off. Like, they were going to make money off our image. So it's something that I thought was really critical to reclaim. And I also think just being subject and the person behind the camera. Well, actually, I had Miss Maya Hodge, who also, shout out, did the violin in the work as well. But yeah, she pressed the button for me, and Auntie Sonia Hodge was my in-house lighting specialist that day. But I think it's always really critical to reclaim and have sovereignty in these spaces about our own image making, because we come from such a horrendous history of surveillance and control. Like, most documentation, if you get any old school photographs of your family, it is a government-owned photograph for the most part. There's the Dawn magazine that was basically a magazine that was propaganda from the New South Wales government, and it's got some of the most stunning photos of my family. And so they're special, but their intention was to, like, because they were only circulated in missions. And it was just like, look how great life is on the missions. So it's just about, that reclamation's really important to me. Yeah. I answer?
Yeah, you did. No, I picked up on that, and we were just having a yarn before, because you were saying there's that that propaganda from the mission. And, I have my auntie, this magazine used to be called Pics. It's like kind of Australia's Life. And they did that's what I found my auntie's images in there, and she's like, oh, beautiful domestic servant, and she's got great sewing skills. And for me, like, I see it, and because I don't have many images or pictures of my Auntie Nettie, but when you read the caption, it makes you feel sick, but it's that kind of dichotomy of like, oh, I'm glad that I have it, but I wish it didn't kind of exist as well at the same time. Can you tell me did you guys want to say anything more to those points? No.
No, you're on a roll.
I want to hear a little bit more about the walk that you might have planned. We've talked a little bit about it, but what is that?
Yeah. Well, so it's a walk from Inglebar to Armidale, and we don't necessarily know what the actual route was, but I do believe it's based on ancient walking tracks. And I think, like, there's, I've heard of, like, mob following the flight path of planes as well to know, because that plane was going to go to Armidale. So, obviously planes were around at that point. So but it's also, like, I think it's just about returning, and I do believe we travel songlines and we travelled by the stars, and I think there's... I want to particularly walk in March, because that is when the Armidale show is. It's actually a really beautiful time of year up home, and I think there's a reason as to why, and it's because we'll travel around the stars, ceremony, and also the show was the only time mob could actually go into town as well. If you were in town at other times, or in other parts of the town which weren't the showground, you were charged with vagrancy. So it's about, so I think it's really critical that I'm supposed to be on country at these times to be able to understand it. Landscape plays a really big role in our worldview. I just think it's really critical, but also this walk is trapped by private land. So it requires, like, potentially negotiation, or looking at ways I can do it without permission as well. So there is, like, a lot of it is trade stock routes. I want to follow the MacDonald River. So you do have rights to be on that waterway, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's safe either. So there's a lot of, like, understanding of place in its current reality, and its, place in many timelines as well. So it's something that I think is really important to do. It's a critical way of doing resurgence with kin. It's not just me. I was initially going to do it, but it's like, that's such a big note and act, and it's just like, my family would not like me to do that alone. But then it's also like, that's where the skin system comes in, right? Because with skin, you come from a skin that you share with many people, and therefore you have a whole line of people who are your siblings and who are your parent as well. And that's what I mean by, like, resurgence belongs in kinship and sovereignty. Yeah.
No, and that's why we've had some real good yarns about walking and because that's a lot of my research. If you don't know, like majority of Australia's national highway network is based on song lines and old walking tracks. If you're looking in archives or any books and they say it's a cattle path, cattle came with Europeans. There's no way that they could make a path. So if you see that, usually is just a misnomer for it was a blackfellow path, and they're all across Australia. And when you put the songline map on top of the national highway map, it's one and the same. So I love that, whether or not it's acknowledged, literally that's what your research and the works that are coming out are engaging with those kind of, those histories. And Yaraan, I just wanted to hear a little bit more about your practice, and you brought that beautiful possum skin. Can you tell me a little bit? You were saying it was to do with the sound as well. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Just that, there's a sort of like a handful of us bringing back those ways of being through the sound. It's really blackfella, and it's really powerful stuff as well. It's about the vibration of country and where those skins belong to country, the different totemic species that belong to that country as well, that make up the skins that form our nations. So, for example, my nation's moiety is the black cockatoo and the white cockatoo. For one of my grandmother bloodlines or matrilineal nations, which is the Djapurrung and the Gunditjmara. And for the Gunditjmara, we have this connection to what we know as Kuntabul, the southern right whale, and also Woolok, the blue whale, and those connections are all based on the language of the ocean and the sound. And so those vibrations that are in the old language sounds actually connect to symbols on the ground, on country. And a lot of the time, what I've discovered is our sacred sites have been built over the top of. So our ceremony grounds, some of the biggest churches in the country have been built directly on top of them. And other massacre grounds where that have been covered up and a pine plantation planted. And recently, down on Djapurrung country, an ancient Kuyang eel stone, massive big Kuyang is a short-fin eel. And so these stones on country that have been there for millennia, that have just been recently moved, and what that means is in a physical sense, but then in that spiritual and cultural sense of how it affects the sound. And sometimes that can reach all the way back to the sound in our bodies, because we're connected directly to the country. So it can affect our families in a different way. But it's just really powerful to be able to go back and walk those sacred pathways and songlines on country, and that they are still there everywhere. Just because they've got a bit of concrete built on top, they never knew how to mess with the law of sound. That's one thing that they couldn't beat us and take away from us forever, I believe. That it's in us, and our bodies are the actual instrument. And some of our mob used to have the morn, which is the possum skin drum, and it was tucked in between your legs and sitting on a sort of squat position and pulling, a few skins sewed together and pulling it tight over your legs and creating that sound, your body directly with your chakras in line with your country, your spirit centres. So, that's something that I think colonisation thought that they broke, but really that, you know, there's, like, blackfellas got a lot of work to do to bring that back, and the levels of that work aren't really, like, we can't really explain that to everybody. There's multi-levels of all those kinship ways and family law ways that connect us to our countries. You know, we've got a lot of work to do, but that sound and vibration, you know, is the living embodiment of what has survived, and like what I mentioned before about the intergenerational love and the gifts in our blood that different parts of country gave to different nations and families. So if you're a saltwater person, you got saltwater in your blood. If you're a mountain woman and, you know, and a river woman, and it's part of you. So yeah, I can't wait to see when you walk country and see what you're going to create.
So we got salt water, more fresh water? Yeah. Fresh.
So Anaiwan country is like up on the gorges, and it's really high up, and it's the headwaters of like the Gedyura and the Macleay, which are really big waterways up home that go into the ocean or go up into the Murray-Darling. But we've got a real strong connection to eels. Our football team up there, the blackfella football team's called the Anaiwan Eels. But apparently that's because Parramatta won the premiership the year before. That's yeah. But we have eels come up that way. I don't know how, but they coming up the mountains. And I think that's really special. And I think eels return to country all the time, and they've been doing that for a really long time. And I think about place and mob like that, we're always constantly returning as well. I'm a freshwater mountain person. And it snows.
And that, it makes so much sense, you know, like the river women weaving those links back strong again. And the eels actually bite the stones to get up the waterfalls.
Oh, there you go. And the sad thing at the moment is we've got really big gorges, like really high gorges, and at the moment, because mob aren't eating them, water's been irrigated, drought and so on, there's a lot of the time that they're just falling to their death from the gorges. So there's a lot of ceremony, I think, that does need to happen and return into place, yeah.
And salt water. Family, okay. That's funny you're talking about eels though, because like mum's like, eels rotten, no, desert, but we eat snakes. I don't know. You just brought up a good point, and I think thinking about, you know, even on cityscapes, you know, there's that country underneath and there's those vibrations, but, and you talk about agriculture and what agriculture has done to country, and also just thinking about that walk. You know, I'm sure the territory, those places that you've got it, that's on farming land, I'm sure, and I think about that a lot. Where when the image, if you're not Indigenous, of like Indigenous land is often not a cow paddock, but they all exist there. It's on top of us. How do you think about agriculture in regards to your country and navigating that? Because what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think the idea of return and vibration back is really important, and we can do that through sound, I believe. Experiment anyways, but it's also sites of conflict and violence. So that illustration that was in the work is an illustration I did through mapping conflict zones, and there's around 40 different conflicts in the first 20 years. And so I just did concentric circles. So for the first conflict, there's just one circle. For the 40th, there's 40 circles. So it looks like this really big black mass in the middle. And those are places in which, if you look at a map of Anaiwan country, it's all the farmed areas. So all those conflicts exist in tandem with these farmed lands. They happened on these farmed lands. It's where the violence happened. So I think returning back to these places means a lot of healing, and I think just us returning back is really critical. Like our laughter is important, our joy is important, just us being in those places is really important. Like we went back to Woolbrook, where my mum's born, and I think we just feel so much joy when we go there, and it's just really nice, and I think that's healing for us and for country. A lot of these farms are like old farms, like these are people who've been there since the frontier. But then there's also like, I don't know, a lot of sustainable farms popping up. Well, no, not sustainable farms, corporations. So they're, the families are selling them off to corporations and so on. So even that's changing in regards to like responsibility and accountability. It's, just a very different game. Yeah.
And that's interesting. Privatization of like really big swopes of farmable land. In those massacres, it's not by chance that farm is there. That massacre happened so that farm could be there, and that's evidence. Throughout. It's like thinking about highways and thinking about those big ceremony spots. Like what's underneath is reverberating on what's on top as well. Hayden, I just wanted to talk a little bit, we've talked to everybody else, just about your practice in general, and I just wanted to hear about what you do a little bit and what you're working on maybe outside of this, or
Sure. I also am doing my PhD. I recently finished a master's at NYU in New York, focusing on like sound technology.
Deadly. Great job.
Thank you. Music technology. And I'm really interested in spatial audio, hence the spatial audio setup. So if you're sitting over here, then you didn't get the full experience, do it again. And my sort of practice is looking at like the technical aspects of different types of like spatial audio technologies, and understanding them and understanding how it works and how acoustics works, and linking that to cultural practice and linking it to like, I guess, Aboriginal epistemologies, and ways of knowing through sound. So I'm really interested in a technique called ambisonics, which is a spatialization technique that we've used in this system. And I'm really interested in it because to record with an ambisonic microphone, which has multiple microphones on it, the logic and the process essentially aims to recreate that 360 degree of like how sound travels to a point in space. So when we're talking about the resonance of our bodies, and when we're talking about archiving, and when we're talking about the origins of like sound archiving, which have the same histories of photography, it was used in First Nations communities in the US, that wasn't done with consultation from the community. So those ways of knowing and understanding sound or the image haven't been integrated into the technology. So a lot of my, I guess, like academic activism is recentering those ideas into the technology that we have. So with ambisonics, that's what I'm interested in, kind of using as the new way, or not new way, but the preferred way of capturing the knowledged body, the resonant body, because by definition, this microphone, this way of recording, not only captures the voice and how the voice articulates, but also captures the resonant body in space. So I do a lot of like drawing those lines between how we understand our sounding, and looking at ways through technology to like interpret that. So
Deadly.
yeah, we use the ambisonic microphone to record the screams and the violins, and yeah.
That's so nice that you're able to explain it in a way that I can understand as well, because bringing back that kind of the cultural practice into the technology, and also just such a important thing to do to keep culture practices alive. And we live in we have technology as well, and that is not necessarily in conflict with our own ways of knowing and our own culture. And I think that's really important work. Sounds so great. Gabi, is there anything else that you wanted that we've not really talked on and you wanted to talk a little bit more that I haven't really uncovered just yet?
No, I don't think so. I think we spoke a lot. Scream. I think everyone should scream. Maybe not in your house, maybe in a car. Very therapeutic. That's all I've got to say.
And please stick around after we've concluded this yarn, because there's going to be some food and some music and some time to maybe, if you want to come up and talk to any of these guys as well. And maybe also look out for Gabi's next work whenever it comes around, or the walk, or was there anything else that anybody else wanted to say, please?
Just to say thank you. That we have these opportunities now to share the different depths of the work, and thank you for inviting me, sis. It's really inspirational hearing about your connections, and just thank you.
And thank you guys, and stick around please. We've got I'm going to play some music.
We got a mad feed actually by Nyok, Shop Bao Nyok, someone who I really wanted to kind of collaborate with. I asked them to respond conceptually to this as well, so we had a quick yarn and just talking about the threads that we had. If you know a bit about what they do, they open shop when they have capacity to run the shop and to hold people, and I just think that's really important. And that's how this work came about as well, is through my capacity that I had. I was also wanting to look after people and looking after yourself. I really learned how to look after myself in this process. They do a lot of mad mutual aid stuff, and also just talking about how important women are in our families and how our worldviews have been shaped by the women in our families and before us, and that's something that Nyok spoke really strongly about as well, is her mother and grandmother as well. So that's going to be served now, I believe, and then Big Shot DJ over here is going to do a set for us.
And please.
I just wanted to acknowledge Gabi's elders that are here today as well, and pay my respects to the Bunurong ancestors and people whose country we're yarning on.
Thanks, and stick around.